Welcome to the Wizards of Amazon podcast, where we cover all things private label. My name is Carlos Alvarez, and I'll be your host for the show. Today, we have a really cool guest and two-time speaker at the Wizards of Amazon meetup group, Dillon Carter. What's up?
How's it going, man?
I am stoked to have you on the show. We just did an event on Zoom, obviously. What was it, 2 weeks ago?
Either 2 or 3 weeks, yeah.
2 or 3 weeks. And the topic it had to do with wholesale, and you shared something in the group full of buzz about. I won't mention it because I know it's kind of under wraps, but it's I got bombarded with questions afterwards, like, oh my God, coolest thing, this guy's awesome. And I've wanted you to be on the show for a while, as I feel like a major focus of yours is wholesale and wholesale selling. And while I do some of that, and I think it's an amazing business model, the podcast is very, private label focused. But then went on this riff of just geeking out about automation and automating your life and everything. And no. I think you even suggested, let's talk about this, because it's an amazing topic and you definitely know your stuff there. But before diving too deep in it, for the people that don't know you, don't know your podcast, your software, everything, can you give an introduction?
Yeah, so my name's Dillon Carter. I'm one of the two co-founders of Vendrive.com, which is a wholesale-based CRM tool, which is the first tool that we had actually ever launched. And then GoAura.com, so it's just Aura, is our repricing tool for resellers. Initially, I actually got into the Amazon space by being a seller, like most of us, right? Like you kind of go the RA route, you kind of test things. You're like, okay, well, RA is cool. I can make money with it, but now I'm the millennial thinking, how do I scale this out, right? So I'm like, okay, well, it's now got to transition either to wholesale or private label. At the moment, I chose wholesale because the cash flow was much quicker, right? It was easier for me to stand that up. Being young and not really having a job at the moment, I was like, cool, I got to make this work. And so I doubled down on wholesale and grew that to about $250,000 in sales. Nothing crazy, but still, at that time, being, from an entrepreneur standpoint, that was the first business that quote unquote succeeded, right? That's the first one that made money. I could support myself. I learned a ton, and then met my co-founder, James, who's actually a computer science major at UMass. He was getting his master's at the time. He was also a wholesale seller doing 7 figures. And we started a software company together. And this whole time I've been in school, also full-time, getting my finance degree. And I actually just graduated, like a week ago, like last Thursday. I was technically done. So it's been a lot. I've kind of transitioned away from the selling myself and more so into the software side, because that's really what I enjoy. And you'll kind of, understand that after you hear me talk about automation, like why it's so important. But that's kind of who I am. I've done a lot, certainly. And where I'm at now is providing more value and building some really interesting things in the Amazon space.
A few things there. First, congratulations for graduating.
Thank you.
And the other one is, how old are you?
So I'm 28. So I took almost 5 years off of school just to figure out what the heck I wanted to do. I was a personal trainer I was a nationally certified personal trainer for about a year, maybe 2 years. Enjoyed that. It was okay, but still working, hourly kind of stuff. And just trying things, man. When people say, when you don't know what to do, test everything. That's literally what I did. I ate my own dog food to a certain degree, right? I tried everything I could. I tried to launch a podcast before I launched a podcast. That didn't.
What was the name of that podcast?
Oh gosh, it was a network marketing related podcast. Oh. And the reason for the idea was I wanted to get people on there that figured it out and would just tell me everything. That's the hack for podcasting. If you can start a podcast, people will tell you everything. And that's what I wanted. And then nobody would actually show up to record an episode. So that kind of died immediately. Now I actually have 2 podcasts. So there's Wholesale Made Easy and now Welcome to Growth.
Welcome to Growth. I'm looking forward to jumping on that.
It's so nerdy. It's like the nerdiest of nerdy Amazon podcasts.
Excited already. Things you mentioned there, and it just kills me. The $250,000. I'm only doing $250,000. I'm not doing that much. It's amazing how we got into that stage where, when did $250,000 stop being a big deal? But you hear everyone else 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure. That almost becomes I feel like a lot of new sellers are even struggling with that. They're
Yeah.
doing a quarter million. They're like, I'm not really succeeding yet because I'm not doing something else. But a quarter million,
Yeah.
that is a lot. And you say you're transitioning from selling. Does that currently not still like in the transition?
No, so not anymore. One of the great things about starting a software company is how quickly it can grow, and it has. So when I say a quarter million is not a lot from a revenue standpoint, it's not to belittle it by any means, because certainly it was hard to get to, and I had to grow and learn a lot. But now I'm at a point where I have a certain level of confidence that I want and know that I can run a company that does 10 million per year. And I'm choosing actively to do that in the software space. I'm a big fan, and I've always said, play chess, not checkers. There are certain situations where if you have a unique situation, unique capabilities, should I say, me being very much into software, my co-founder being an actual full stack engineer, like we can build these things, and not many people can say that and also have the industry expertise like we both do. For chestnut checkers, I'm willing to trade a company that does a quarter million in revenue for one that does $1 million in revenue within a year or two, and then theoretically be able to do 10 million in the next 2 to 3 years.
Sounds like a solid option, man.
Right? It's a little strategic, but that's the kind of way I like to play.
So full-time school, just graduated, transitioning from selling, 28. What else we have here? 2 software companies.
Yep.
This is gonna go like really good into the actual topic we're talking about, because I get asked this a lot. I have over 50 companies, do the podcast, I have the meetup, I do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard you geeking out on the Zoom meetup 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh no, and you were telling me stuff that I didn't know, and I felt like I wrote the book on this. So I'm dying to hear the rest of this. So how do you make it all work? Here's your softball. How do you make all this work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I failed to mention, I also kind of helped co-found a prep company out of Oregon, and I'm in Florida, by the way. So that's completely across the country. The way I approach things, I joke a lot that I'm effectively lazy. It's not that I'm lazy in the sense of I'm not willing to work, because I do. I work at least 12-hour days, probably minimum, and happily. When I say effectively lazy, what I actually mean is I'm not willing to waste my time if I don't have to. Now, the caveat here is a lot of people immediately jump to the virtual assistant route, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they fail to look at the sequence of how things should flow, right? So you go, I shouldn't be doing this as the business owner, therefore a VA should do this. The way I view it is, should a human be doing this? 9 times out of 10, I can find a tool that is either free or incredibly cheap. And by incredibly cheap, I mean sub $50 for lifetime purchase that can do that thing with minimum errors and execute 24/7. Those are the things that I'm looking at. Prime example, when we started the prep company, I'm not there, right? So I can't touch the warehouse stuff. But what I can do is build an internal automated system to help them from day one have the maximum amount of efficiency that they can have with a very small team. And so what I'm looking at, and the lens through which I'm looking at everything is, how can we, with the minimum amount of people, get something amazing done? And the framework for that is, I want people to hear how much revenue we're doing, ask how many people are in the company, and not believe me. So in a lot of companies, you might peg your employee count to revenue. So you might say, I want to have at least 100 grand in revenue per employee. 100 grand in revenue per employee is not bad. It's not great. If you can get to $250,000 in revenue annually per employee, that's actually really good. I don't care about really good. I care about exceptional. How do we have $500,000 in revenue per employee and not have to work 80 hours a week if we don't want to, right? I'm asking hard questions. And to be frank, the only way you can do these kinds of things is by having tools that do a lot of the work for you. And so there's different levels of automation, right? There's the ones that I use in personal life, and then there's ones that I use in the business world as well.
I feel like when we talk about personal life and business, I get what you're saying, but I think a lot of people have this, maybe you disagree with me, they have this like massive division between the two. And I feel like there is a lot of bleed into both, because you're not automating, or are very efficient in your personal life, that is going to carry over into your professional life and affect it. Like you can't be super efficient in one and not the other.
Oh, without a doubt, right? And I've pretty much given up the idea of work-life balance. I like work-life integration, and the people that are in my life know this. When
I'm
me
writing
and my
that down for a
girlfriend
book title. Hold on, I'm writing
right?
life integration.
Yeah, when me and my girlfriend started to date early on, like week one, I was like, listen, I'm just letting you know this is how my life operates, and there's going to be bleed over. There is no, it's 5 o'clock, things are done. It's going to be probably closer to like 8 or 9 p.m., but I love what I do. And I like having that bleed over, right? Like it's interesting. And I say that subdivision only because I think there's different tools you're going to use in different areas, right? And that's the way I view it. So in terms of automating certain personal things, I might go with like a Siri shortcut. Or for business stuff, I'm probably going to lean more on like a Zapier or Keyboard Maestro, right? And these are just tools that we're going to throw out there that I use, and we can certainly go over which ones. But it starts basic, right? And there's things that go across the board that's personal and business. Prime example, stop typing your email every single day. It's a waste of your time. Instead, regardless of, so I use all Apple products. I'm a fanboy. I get it, but it's
The only reason you're on here. If it would have been PC, it was not going to happen.
Right, exactly. So here's what I've got set up. For my business email on any of my devices, if I type in ;BEM, it will replace that text with my business email. If I do ;PEM, it will replace that text with my personal email. These are little things. And I can hear people's eyes rolling, be like, Dillon, who cares, bro? It takes me like less than a second to type my email. My point though, is that when you take that one thing from 1 second to half a second, and then you multiply that times 50 times per day, times the number of other things you can also save your time on, it's astounding. Another great example, emails. Why are you not using templated emails on things? And by the way, it's not to sound, unempathetic or, non-human. The point is that if I get asked the same question over and over, it's now a waste of my time to write you a terribly written, because I'm in a rush, email. You don't get value, I don't get value. Instead, I can sit down, really put thought into a valuable piece of content that I could send to somebody when they ask me X, Y, or Z. And every time they send that to me, in 2 to 3 seconds, I can fire off an email that feels personalized, that answers their exact question, and I'm not wasting any of our time. That's important, and that we can take that and extrapolate it as far as we want to.
Let's back up a second, because that's amazing. But I feel like if we just run on the email route, you and I are just, this thing's going to be called automating your emails at the end of this.
Right.
So your primary colors, we know them, like the little pack. I think it's a pack of 8 you get as a kid or something. Like your primary colors, those are your colors that are in your toolbox. So what would be your primary tools for automation? Like, what does your automation toolbox sort of look like? And
yeah, like what's my tech stack?
yeah, and maybe exactly. Sure. And then maybe briefly explain like what your purpose is for having that in the box, and maybe a scenario on how you use it.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and honestly, it's not a lot. You're going to be astounded with how much automation you can get done with like under $100. So if we're talking local on my MacBook, right? So if we're using Apple products, the first one we're going to look at and consider, because it could do so much that we'll go into, is Keyboard Maestro. There are Windows alternatives to everything I'm talking about, by the way. I just don't know them because I hate PCs, but know that they're there. If you're that person, they exist. Keyboard Maestro allows you to basically create like point and click automations. Prime example. Every time I do caps lock C on my keyboard, Keyboard Maestro will then open up a software called Clean My Mac X. It will then go through the menu options and say, oh, scan. It'll wait until it then has an option that says run. So it lets the scan happen first. Once run is now available, it will then click on that, and it will go through the entire process of cleaning my Mac for me. And then when it's done, it will actually close down the application. Now, that whole process, which is wasteful for me as a human, by the way, because while it's scanning, I can't do anything. Now, I'm typically doing this at the end of the day, so I'm not going to do that and do work at the same time. It doesn't really correlate. Instead, I just do caps lock C, walk away from my computer, and I'm done. So one, I can do image recognition, so I can have it I can have it click on images that it finds on the screen if I have those saved somewhere, which I've certainly done. I can have little things like there's sites I always go to. So instead of me having to use bookmarks, which sometimes I do, but if I'm going to a site every single day, guess what I'm going to do? Caps lock P to go to ProfitWell, which is our revenue analytics product. Like why do I need to type, Command T for a new, and listen, I use keyboard shortcuts for everything. And I'm telling you this is faster, right? Because I'm taking something that would have taken me 4 to 5 clicks down to 1, and I'm already in there doing what I need to be doing. So Keyboard Maestro will allow you to control your computer, and I can't cover everything it can do because it does that much. It's opening applications, it's automating applications. I have keyboard macros in Keyboard Maestro. It's a lot of terms there. That only work in my Spark email client, but it helps me get things done. So there's even more complex keyboard shortcuts that some applications use, but it's hard for me to remember. I'll just tell Keyboard Maestro, use this simplified version, but still give me that same outcome. So I can make things simple for me to do.
And how much is it? And what's the learning curve on it? Because you just used macro, you
right.
used a software company, and you just used a lot of terms in the same sentence. And I'm already like short circuiting here. So like,
right. So Keyboard Maestro is under $40. It is the cheapest thing. No, period. Okay. Yeah, I know. ... Right. Like that's ridiculous. So it's incredibly cheap, $40 per month. And there is a forum that is astounding. And the way I approach things, because there's some things that I'm still learning that Keyboard Maestro can do, where I just Google Keyboard Maestro, can it do this? And there's a forum post that's like, yeah, I can do that. And here's how to do it. The learning curve is really not that bad. The point here, though, is that you need to start with a repetitive problem that you have and then try to fix that with Keyboard Maestro. The text replacement that we talked about with like the emails, you can absolutely do that with Keyboard Maestro. Another version that I do is I'm not going to type in today's date. I don't need to go find out what it is because half the time I don't know what it is. I go semicolon TD for today's date and it replaces it, April-27, 2020. And I can have that be whatever format I want. It can automate file management, which we'll talk about with my second tool, but Keyboard Maestro can do everything that all the other tools can do, with few exceptions. But if you're starting, Keyboard Maestro is like the go-to minimum one that I'm going to have.
And I think for the rest of these tools, like we're also going to want to know this. If you can add in, how did you determine? At what point did you determine what were the things that were so repetitive, and then you did this calculation of this many seconds times this many days, and when did that mental gymnastics come in?
Yeah, I will randomly create a Google Doc or just a piece of paper, and just every time I do a task, I write it down. And then at the end of the week, I will say, okay, which one of these could a computer do? Or could a tool do that I know exists? Or, and here's where it gets really fun, could a computer do this task? I don't know. Let me go Google and find out, right? And then I'm literally searching like what tools can do X, Y, and Z for me. Another thing I can do is, obviously I can write down a list of the tasks that I'm repetitively doing, but I can also put a little mark every time I do them. So I can say, okay, I typed my email 20 times today. That took me on average 2 seconds. Not that big of a deal, but times however many times I did it that day, times, how many days in a year, now you see it add up. And all I'm trying to do is reduce that waste time across the board, right? Because those things start to stack up. The reason why I mentioned Keyboard Maestro first is if you just get that, it's going to solve 80% of your problems on your local machine.
Wow.
Number 2 is going to be Hazel. So, Hazel, go ahead.
Spell it like it sounds?
Yep, spell it just like it sounds, Hazel. Hazel, and again, Keyboard Maestro can also do this, but I do like Hazel. Hazel allows you to create rules to manage your files. Prime example. If a file enters my downloads folder and has a extension of .pdf, I want you to rename it using these rules and then move it to my PDF folder. It will do all of this for you. It can rename files. It can look inside of files and see if it contains something. Here's a great applicable idea for this. If you're routinely getting invoices from your wholesale suppliers, you have those, just go to your downloads folder like you normally would. Hazel goes, oh, that's from supplier A. Therefore, I'm going to rename it supplier A, invoice number, blah, blah, dash today's date. And then I'm going to move it into a specific folder for suppliers A's invoices.
Okay.
That's done for you.
Okay, hold on. So how's Hazel gonna know that that invoice is from X supplier? How does that happen?
There's a few ways. One, if they name their files the exact same way, you can basically say, hey, look for this pattern. We got you covered. Number two, it can look inside and read it.
The email.
Here's what's no, the actual file, the attachment itself. So if you save, but don't worry, I got you covered on the attachment if you don't want to save that either. We'll take this to another level. It can read the file and say, oh, it says supplier A's name, therefore this is supplier A, trigger all that to happen. Now, let's say you don't want to save your downloads or your attachments from emails because why should you? A computer can do it. Here's what you do. This is a fantastic tool that I heavily use and pay for, Zapier. Zapier is free if you have, 5 zaps. A zap is essentially just one automation. And then it's $20 per month after that for 20. It's super cheap either way. You can tell Zapier every time an email comes through from supplier A's email, I want you to save the attachments to a Dropbox folder that is then synced on your local machine. Hazel then watches that downloads folder for Dropbox and says, oh, wait, look, it's from there. Let me do that for you. So now you don't even need to check the email. We can take this further and further and further. But that's one area.
Okay. So let's back up. So I can set it up to say, all attachments, any email I receive with an attachment,
yes,
I want you to stick this attachment in my Google Drive.
Yes.
Folder named blank.
Yes.
Awesome.
100%. And then Zapier, assuming you have that synced up with your local machine, Zapier can now run automations on that.
Well, here's one for me this is just me trying to grab the low hanging fruit here and get some help myself is I have zero file management skills. I'll confess. My file management consists of, I go screenshot nuts for everything. Command Shift 4, grab it and it just lives on my desktop. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is I eventually cannot see my screensaver because it's just packed with things. And then I create a folder called, whatever computer I'm on, desktop, dump, and I drag everything in that folder and then it just sits there. And then I'll have like 10 folders and these things are just full of, 6 months worth of screenshots each. So what would you suggest for that?
So I do this too. I actually am OCD. I can't stand having any icons on my desktop. So here's what I have Hazel do. If it's a screenshot, it's automatically going to move it from the desktop to my downloads folder. So that's already clean, done, taken care of. 2, if a file is in my downloads folder and it has not been touched in 1 day, Hazel will move that to the trash. Automatic cleanup. Now, here's where it gets more interesting.
My anxiety is kicking in right now. Trash.
Right. So now here's what's cool. My downloads folder, always clean, period. 2, if a file has been in trash longer than 1 day, it then automatically gets fully deleted. So I never clean my trash. Everything is optimized for me. I have this managed like movie files. I have this managed, photos, right? So I can tell, actually, here's one that I've been testing because I like Evernote. I like to save PDFs, typically ebooks. Well, if it's a .pdf in my downloads folder, Hazel will then move it to my move to Evernote folder. And when it gets moved to my move to Evernote folder, it then gets imported or uploaded into Evernote. So it automatically gets backed up and then the local version gets deleted. So
what about if you're not using Evernote? Can that be Drive? It could be Dropbox.
Yeah, of course, 100%. And that's the cool thing here, right? It's not just this is the way you have to do it. There's so many versions. And what's great about these types of tools is you get to say, here's when I want you to trigger, here's what I want you to do, and here's what I want you to do after that. It's completely up to you.
What was the cost on Hazel and what's the learning curve?
So Hazel, I believe, is around a little bit below $70. So it's a little bit more expensive. This is why,
per life.
Life. That's the great part here, right? A lot of these tools are cheap if, one-time purchase. Hazel, I would say, has a lower learning curve than Keyboard Maestro only because it's limited to just file management. Whereas Keyboard Maestro can do the file management if you want. So if you're like, Dillon, I got, $80 to play with, go Keyboard Maestro. If you got a little bit more, Keyboard Maestro plus Hazel. And what's cool is when you start to push these tools together and they start to work together, then we can get a little bit more advanced. But one, my computer's always clean, and everything backed up that I know needs to get backed up, it's backed up, it's done. I get to basically say, listen, tools, here's how I in an ideal world would manage my files. Just do it for me, because I'm a human, I'm busy, I'm not gonna do it for me. And then we're good, we're done.
Okay, so Keyboard Maestro, Hazel, those are in your automation toolbox. Any other tools? You mentioned
yes.
Zapier.
So number 3 is going to be Zapier. So Zapier is going to be web-based automation, right? So this is not running on your local machine or anything like that. Zapier allows you to connect your different accounts, right? So I might connect my Gmail with my calendar to do something fun. What I mentioned earlier is you could have Zapier say every attachment from this specific email, maybe your supplier's email, gets saved to this Dropbox folder. That's Zapier, right? It's able to do things like that. I can also, one of the things we do is we run a Facebook group, and approving people is time consuming. So I have it set up where Zapier watches a Google Sheet, and there's a name and an email column. I just export what I have, paste it in there, and then Zapier says for every new row, I'm going to take the name and the email, and I'm going to add them to your MailChimp list because people want that, right? We're set up to do that. I don't have to manually do that now. I literally just copy and paste, and I'm out. And now Zapier is going to go row by row and do the thing that I need it to do.
Hold on. No. Walk it back. You're going to do this one again. Walk it back. So we have a Facebook group. I have a Facebook group. And you're absolutely right. Those are my dogs on the background. I knew they were going to kick in. But we have the Facebook group. It is very time consuming approving people. Start it from there again. What is it that you do? How are you using Zapier with the Facebook group?
So what I do is we offer a free ebook, right? And so I say, listen, if you want access to this, just leave your email and I'll send it to you and add you to our list. Not required, but people do that. So one, I go through and I filter the people that are basically denied. Like, you're just not going to get in for whatever reason, right? Number 2, I then just copy the name of the person and then their email, and I paste that, should I say, in a Google Sheet. And it's just got name and email as the columns. Zapier is set up on that sheet. Every time a new row is added or a new name and email pair is added, it will take that data and then send it to MailChimp to add them to my list, which then, of course, because it's MailChimp, I have automated campaigns, takes over from there.
Well, I might have something to add on that one. I use a tool called Group Funnels.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever used it. Arnie Giskey's tool, a good friend of mine. I think it's a few $100 once for life, but there'll be one button that you need to click in the Facebook group showing everybody. You can deny who you want. It'll stick them automatically on the sheet. And then that sheet will push to wherever you need it to go. In my case, Active Campaign or MailChimp, Constant Contact, whatever. But yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I pretty much like built that functionality like off the shelf tools, right? So that's one. So Zapier does a ton of stuff. One of the things I use it for recently is so we launched the new podcast. I have an Airtable. So Airtable is like a spreadsheet, but a little bit cooler. And I have it set up to where whenever we release a new episode, it will look to see if there's a guest on that episode. If there is a guest on that episode, it will get their name and email and then send them a Gmail email from me that says, hey, first name, super grateful to have you on. This is super awesome. Just so you know, it just went live and here's the link. I don't have to do any of that now, right? So I don't have to go, oh, I need to remember to email that person, or, oh, I need to remember to add that new episode to my Buffer account so it gets pushed out to my social media accounts. That's all done via Zapier.
But this integration is between Zapier, Airtable, and what else?
So Gmail.
And Gmail.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you use Airtable for your project management, or is this just in addition to a project management tool?
I don't really do project management in the traditional way. I reverse engineer a lot of things, but I do use Airtable for that. I use Airtable for, gosh, so many different things. One, I can use it as a database, which we are for the prep center. So every new order gets put there, and then I can manipulate that data however I want. Two, I do use it for like weekly planning. So what I do is I have one called my goals database, and then I have different tabs. So I have my 2020 tab, which is like, what do I want to accomplish this year, broken down by category. Then I have my quarterly tab, which I say, okay, for every one of these annual goals, what are the things I can do this quarter to make sure that I'm on track with this? And I link those together so I know which relates to what. Third, I also do that for my week or my monthly. So I say, okay, great. For what I want to accomplish this quarter, what needs to happen this month, the month I'm currently in, to make sure I'm on the track for blah, 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 right? And then each Sunday I sit down and say, great, based off what I need to accomplish this month, what do I need to get done this week? So I'm getting super granular, right? So you can use Airtable for that. You can use it for managing a business. You can certainly use it for project management, all kinds of stuff, right? And this is the cool part about the tools that exist. You can bend them to your will, right? Like however you want to use them, you can make it work. But my number 3 pick is certainly going to be Zapier. Just play with it. It's free to start. Number 4, Siri shortcuts is phenomenal. It's the closest thing we can get to Keyboard Maestro on an iPad or an iPhone. You can do some phenomenal things if you understand like what APIs are and stuff like that. You can pull data from servers. You can manipulate it, push it back. I mean, there's some ridiculous things you can do.
Give me some Siri examples there, because Siri and I's relationship is not very good, to be honest with you. I feel like Siri, I don't know, got hit by a car a long time ago or something like that. And sure. I don't know. I've never been able to like put a lot of trust in Siri. Now with Alexa, I'm there. Like I trust Alexa. I tell Alexa to do something and I know it's going to happen. But you mentioned API and pulling data and Siri in the same sentence, and that it doesn't compute for me. So tell me how that happens.
So I'm trying to see if I can calculate how many of these I have. I have a decent amount. One of the ones that I use, here's a great one. I can, all right, so we're going to get crazy here. I'm going to connect Siri shortcuts with Zapier with MailChimp.
Okay, walk me through it.
So previously for like 2 years, I did live sourcing every Tuesday.
Sure.
For an hour. I would have to manually create the 2 email notifications, 1 2 hours before, just let people know, hey, it's going to be happening. And then right when it starts with the link. I could manually recreate, clone, duplicate those emails and change a bunch of stuff. I don't really care to do that. So what I did is I had Zapier connect with Siri shortcuts and say, every time I click this button, it's going to push data to Zapier to trigger Zapier to do some automation, which was log into my MailChimp account, create these 2 emails exactly the way that I want them. And then all I have to do is log into MailChimp and then say, go. Now Zapier updated, so you actually don't even have to say go anymore.
Hold on a second. I didn't even know Siri was smart enough to connect to a Zap. So like, where are you connecting? I know the extent of my Siri knowledge is I hold the home button, I hear the sound bling, and then I say something, and then it usually doesn't understand me, or definitely doesn't understand my wife. But like, tell me what do you mean? Is Siri shortcuts something different than the way I'm using Siri?
Yes, it is. It is how you create steps for Siri to follow. Now, I typically don't trigger these by voice, although sometimes I do. Typically, I just have these set up here, if you can kind of see. And if I tag one of these, you can see
for people that are
actions
for people that are like listening to this, I'm looking at your iPad and there's a bunch of, it looks like widgets. Yeah. Like clickable widgets, and you've created each of those widgets to do something. Exactly. Oh, so this is like mission control. Like you're in charge of the nuclear missiles, and you're just picking where you want them to go. You're sending me that after this. I won't end until you send me this.
Here's the cool thing. Keyboard Maestro. Listen, I like to connect things, right? So Keyboard Maestro, the automations you create there, you can remotely trigger based off an URL that they give you for each of your automations. Guess what I can do from my iPad or my phone? I can trigger automations from my iPhone to happen on my computer, regardless of where I am, as long as it's online and obviously powered on. So that clean my Mac automation I shared earlier, I can trigger that from my phone. I can trigger that from my iPad. Doesn't matter.
And you can trigger it from those mobile devices to activate on your desktop or your laptop.
Yes,
as long as
exactly.
the device is on.
100%. So one, I can connect pretty much anything to Zapier or Keyboard Maestro. This is where things get interesting, right? What I'm trying to do is get a lot done, but reduce my input, right? I want to say one thing or click one button and have 30 tasks happen because of the single thing I did. But more importantly, and ideally, I didn't have to do that singular thing. A tool like Zapier is just waiting for that trigger itself and then does all those 30 things without me having to do it. It just gets done. And now I can free up my time to focus on other things.
Wow.
And it's basic stuff sometimes, right? Like here's a good one that's like slightly painful, but it's beautiful when you solve it. This is a combination of Siri shortcuts and Keyboard Maestro. So I'm jumping back and forth between Zoom calls and phone calls. I like my AirPods. I don't like to hold up a phone, right? I talk with my hands, right? So I created the same automations in both Keyboard Maestro and Siri shortcuts. All it is I click one button on Siri shortcuts. It then, enables Bluetooth and then switches these over my AirPods to either my iPad or my iPhone, whichever, it doesn't matter. If I need to switch back over to Zoom or back over to audio from my computer, I do caps lock B and it will do the same thing. So I don't have to go to settings, connect, blah, blah, blah. I press one button or do caps lock B and I can switch back and forth all day long with no problem. Little things that when you start to go down this rabbit hole, you're like, everything in my life is that little thing and I can solve all of it and just have this blissful day of just getting ridiculous amounts of things done without feeling like I'm wasting my time on, the transition or those little things that, again, why do I need to spend 15, 20 minutes recreating an email when I can just press one button?
Yeah,
it adds
absolutely. Up. So Keyboard Maestro, Hazel, Siri shortcuts. Are there anything else in your automation toolbox that like standout tools?
Yeah. So this is not a automation tool, but it plays in my ecosystem, so to speak. Actually, I'm gonna give you two because they're very similar. I don't like the idea of it being a large friction point for me to create a task to get done or an event on my calendar, right? Like you got to click 30 times. Like, no. Todoist is the the To-Do app that I use. The reason for it is it uses something called natural language processing. All that means is you can type out a sentence. It can parse through it and say, great, you said tomorrow. Therefore, this task is due tomorrow. Or let's say it's due next Thursday. I can type the task name next Thursday and it goes, great. We scheduled it for next Thursday for you. If I have different projects, I can say hashtag Aura and it knows to put it in that specific project. If I do P1, it knows it's a higher priority than P3. So what I can do is I can quickly say, oh, I have an idea for a task or something that needs to get done, hit caps lock T, because again, I'm connecting Todoist with Keyboard Maestro. It brings up a little prompt. I just type in what I need. I don't need to click anything. I hit enter. It's scheduled. It's organized. It's given a priority and I'm out. Now, in terms of you remembering things, stop, because you're not, right? Like just write everything down. And instead of having a piece of paper, have a system that you work from every single day. Like I fire up Todoist every single day and I just work through that list. And I know that all the tasks are there because I made a thoughtful decision that these tasks today relate to me hitting my monthly, my quarterly, and my annual goals. Easy.
So walk me through that again. You're on you're at your workstation, desktop, and you have a thought of something that you want to get done or a good idea or something that you may even maybe something you're not ready to act on right now, but you don't want to take up bandwidth in your head. And you also want to relax and know it's somewhere safe for you to revisit. Okay.
Yeah.
And you would do, /T.
So I'm going to do caps lock T.
Caps lock T, but you're communicating to Todoist then on your computer or you're communicating to Keyboard Maestro?
So this is straight Todoist.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you because this is video too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So let's
And
show you here.
We'll try to like talk it out as well, but
Exactly,
the video
100%.
version, yeah.
I'm going to need you to enable
Oh yeah.
that for me, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it.
Let's see. All right, there you go. You should be able to do it now.
Perfect. Okay, so this is my desktop, right? It's relatively clean. I got a few logos over here because I'm currently working on stuff. Don't judge me. Here's what I'm gonna do: caps lock T. See if it's gonna. There we go. Hold on. There you go. Caps lock T. This is regardless of whatever is behind this. This comes up. Now I can click through all of the icons and settings if I want, but I'm not. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do. This is a test task. Easy, if I can type. Now, what I'm going to say is, you know what, this is an Aura project. So I want to make sure it's filed under Aura. So I do hashtag Aura, tab. Now, if I hit enter, it knows the name of the task and it knows where to place it, but it doesn't have a due date, right? So you know what, I can't execute on this task now, but I can tomorrow. Perfect. Let's do TOM.
Okay, so what's happening here? Like for people that are listening, you hit, caps lock T, and this window, like a pop-up, came up on your screen, and you just wrote in, this is a test task. Then you did a space hashtag Aura, space TOM. So the hashtag Aura, that's something probably in Todoist. You've already created maybe a bucket for Aura.
Exactly.
And then the TOM you've abbreviated also in Todoist, which means tomorrow.
100%. I can say this is actually due May. I'm gonna do May 3. And now it's highlighted. Whenever I hit enter, it's gonna schedule this to come back to me on May 3rd. The point here is that if I cannot execute on a task, why is it taking up any mental clarity?
Right.
So, or capacity, right? So what I need to do is say, it does need to get done, but it can't get done today. I know I have a little bit more time on Thursdays. Okay, let me do THUR for Thursday, or I can definitely type out Thursday. And the next Thursday, today's Tuesday, so in 2 days, this will be on my to-do list for that day. Now, let's say this is pretty high priority. This is a, priority number 1. If I do space P1, now on Thursday, when I look at all the things that are due that day, this is going to be at the top.
On Todoist.
On Todoist, 100%.
This is in addition to Airtable. So you're checking multiple things now to figure out what you're doing that day.
Yes and no. So we can get a little bit more advanced, but I actually connect the two. They actually talk to each other.
So Todoist can communicate with Airtable.
I make it so via Zapier. Now here's the important caveat here, because it seems like a lot. Airtable is for planning, right? These are all tasks related to me hitting my annual goals. Now, if I just have a random thought during the day, I'm just going to throw it in Todoist. Now, I work from Todoist day to day. So when I sit down on Sundays and I say, here are the 2 to 3 tasks per day that needs to get done this week based off my annual goals, they get thrown into Todoist. The reason for that is those aren't the only 2 to 3 tasks that need to get done. Those are just the ones that relate to my annual goals. But I have other areas, right? I have classes, or not anymore, but I had classes. I have personal life, right? And so just because it's not a critical, task for a
remember
Monday,
to get girlfriend a present.
Right, exactly. Stuff like that. But here's why this is important. This takes no time at all for me to go from an idea to it's logged somewhere, right? So I do caps lock T. This is a test task, hashtag Aura, tab, Thursday, P1, hit enter, and it's gone. And guess what? I'm going to get back on Thursday. That exact task. And I know it's related to Aura.
Does it have an audio version? Like if you're walking around, let's say, and you want to like audio in and record a message, and it'll pop it in Todoist?
So this is where a tool like Siri shortcuts would come into play. So I can actually create that and say, hey, record my voice, turn that into text, and then turn that into a task in Todoist.
Go ahead and invoice me now. You got it.
Now, let's take this a step further, because Dillon creates a lot of calendar events because now I speak more and, we have meetings. Okay. My big problem was I don't like the fact that I have to drag and drop on Google, calendar, all these things and click and blah, blah. I don't want to do that. I don't. So therefore, my question to Google was, is there a calendar equivalent of Todoist? Because I love that natural language flow. There is. It's called Fantastical. And you'll notice how, if you're not watching this, I'll explain it. How I'm launching applications is command space. I'm using a free tool called Alfred. Please just get this. I can close applications. I can restart my computer. I'm not touching my mouse to do any of this. This is what's important, right? I can say open downloads folder, done, we're good. I can jump around. If I need to search something on YouTube, I go YouTube, what I want to search for, it will bring that up. If I need to search in Google Drive, I can do the same thing. It's about speed. Side note, all right? So here's Fantastical. I'm gonna bring up my calendar right now. And we're gonna do the exact same thing. So I'm gonna do Command N. We'll see this little pop up in the top left. It's just another input, but it's going to read the same thing. So I'm going to say podcast interview with, let's do this. We're going to do just podcast interview first. Podcast interview, that's going to be the title of the event, but I'm with Carlos. So I can do with Carlos. Now what it's doing is it's actually looking for your email. I'm going to choose your email because that's the one I want you in on. And I'm going to say, this is going to be tomorrow at 2 p.m. EST, and it's going to be 30 minutes. So I'm going to do 30 M put together, lowercase. And I want to say there's no alert, but there is going to be Zoom. Okay. So I can actually expand this, add a Zoom meeting from here, press enter, and now it's created. So all I did, again, same speed as getting a task, I can create an event on my calendar with people attending. Oh, you know what? This is actually on my personal email calendar. It needs to be on Aura. I do /Aura. Now it's actually going to be on my Aura calendar because I have multiple calendars.
And this is to replace, say, your Gmail.
Yeah. Now I still use Gmail as like my default calendar, but this works with it. So the moment I press enter, I can go to Google Calendar and it will also be there.
Wow.
So the same speed that I used to add a task to Todoist is the exact same speed of which I can create a calendar invite for anything, for anybody, and not say, oh, just create it, but then I have to go log in and then add Zoom and then invite you. No, commands the whole time. Easy.
That's pretty wild. So you dropped in Fantastical.
Yeah, Fantastical.
Alfred, Fantastical, Alfred, Todoist, Siri, Hazel, and Keyboard Maestro. That's looking like a set of primary colors. Is there any more?
Let's see. There's a few alternatives or extras. If you want an alternative to Zapier, you can check out Integromat. I can't spell it off the top of my head, but it spells the way it sounds.
Yeah.
It's very similar to Zapier, slightly different. What are some other ones? I use I use a app called Drafts on all of my Apple devices. The reason for this, when you open it up, it just creates a new blank page for you to type, but you can create actions. So if I have a random idea that's not just a task I can throw into Todoist, I may need to flesh it out a little bit. I can open up Drafts, type everything out, and then if I want to, I can create actions. So I can say, hey, you know what? Take that text and then send it to Todoist for me. So it's like anytime I need to have a thought experiment or play around and think about something, I'm going to throw it into Drafts because it syncs across everywhere. And then, so let's say here's a prime example. The other day I was like, how do we double growth? It's an interesting concept. Let's write out 10 ideas of how we could do that right now in the car. I did that in Drafts. When I got home, I opened up Drafts on my Mac and then just said, hey, take every line, every one of these ideas, and then just send it over to Todoist as an actual task for us to do. That's one. That one's free. It's got a premium version, but I'm just on the free version. To be honest, that's the big ones. If you can,
that's enough.
I mean, there's certainly more that I use on my local machine that are just efficiencies, right? Like clipboard management. This is going to get nerdy, but how many times do you copy something, copy another thing, but need the first thing? Like literally every day. So I use a free application called Copy Clip, all put together. And what it does is whenever you click on it in your bar at the top, it shows you the last 10 things you copied. So if I'm like, oh, I copied it, but I over copied and now I have to log back in. No, it's right there. It's number 8.
And this is a Chrome extension.
So this is a Mac application. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, I use all kinds of stuff.
No, that's actually enough. My next one is, where does somebody start?
Yeah, I know that. I always get that question.
What's the call? Let's pick up the costs real quick. Keyboard Maestro, what is that? $40, $60?
Roughly $40.
$40 one time for life.
Correct.
Hazel is what?
70 one time.
So we're like 110 for life. Siri shortcuts.
Free.
Todoist.
Free. However, I do use their premium version, but I've been using the free version for years. So let's just say free.
Let's say free. Alfred free. And copy clip.
Yep. Free.
Free. So we're at 110.
Yep.
110 one time for life.
Yeah.
And this is going to just continue to free up time for you. So now where does somebody start?
It starts with a problem, like everything else, right? Whenever you're getting involved in anything technical, what you don't want to do is say, what can it do? That's not how this works. The framework you need to approach this from is, what's your biggest problem? What's the thing that if you could hit the easy button or wave a magic wand and never have to do again, what would it be? Clarify that. Then clarify the steps you have to do, and then start to ask the question, literally via Google, what tool can do this? I can tell you 8 out of 10 times at least, Keyboard Maestro is going to be able to do it. If you're like Dillon, over $100 is a little too much for me. Great. Get rid of Hazel. Keyboard Maestro can still do what Hazel can do, right? So you can even get cheaper if you want to. Like, so all this could be had for $40. But I'm a big fan of Ari Meisel's OAO framework. So Ari runs a company called The Replaceable Founder. He loves automation and like outsourcing, right? But he made a good point. He goes, a lot of people jump from, I shouldn't be doing this, to let me get a VA. And it does kind of make rational sense, right? Like, my time's worth $180 per hour. A VA's is worth less than 10. There's an arbitrage there theoretically. The problem though is if you take a task that you as a human cannot stand doing, why would you hand that to another human? In my opinion, it gets slightly disrespectful, right? Because you're like, okay, a computer could do this, but I'm going to give it to you. Why? You're wasting human capital. And yeah, might be, $5 to $7 per hour, but a tool that costs you $40 one time costs you pennies per hour, if not negligible. And so the OAO framework is a sequence you go through for every single task. The first one is you optimize that task. You make the assumption that you can never automate or outsource this to anybody. You have to keep doing it. Therefore, make it easier for yourself to do. Reduce the steps. 2, once you've optimized everything, you then look for a solution to automate it. Because if you can hand it over to a computer, 1, it's cheaper. 2, you're going to have less errors. 3, it's going to run 24/7. You might as well do that. Now, assuming we've optimized the entire process, we've then automated what we can, we may still have a step or some extra actions that a human still has to do. Now is when you hand that over to another human and you outsource it, right? So it goes optimization, automation, outsource. That's the sequence you have got to go through. If you do that, you're going to reduce your overhead from a labor standpoint dramatically.
Makes a ton of sense, man. I'm blown away, just like I was the last time you started dropping these.
I love it, man.
Yeah, I really. I'm going to start wrapping this up to be respectful of your time. Just so you know, right before we wrap this up completely, I'm going to ask. You can think about it now, but I'm going to ask you what's your favorite book and why. So okay. I should have gave you warning before this, but hey,
sure.
Maybe that'll.
I'm ready.
Yeah. So where can people get a hold of you? Mention something about your podcast. I think the Wholesale Made Easy podcast I've actually had an opportunity to listen to. I think it's amazing. I think people should listen to it. I really don't understand. Even though PL is kind of my thing, I do amazing on wholesale. And I hate that in the Amazon community, people just get blinders and I'm a PL person. I'm like, no, you're a business person. You make money,
Yeah.
So what how can people find out more about your podcast? How can people reach you? How can they learn more about your software? Where can they reach you to ask questions about this? And then what's your favorite book and why?
Sure. So if you want to read, I do have a personal blog. It's just Dillon, Dillon Carter.com. So I write about like personal stuff there, some systems kind of stuff. If you want to definitely dive into podcasts, which I would urge you to do so, definitely check out Wholesale Made Easy. And then I would go through that entire season. It's like 40 plus episodes. It's like soup to nuts. Do that. And then I would say, quote unquote, graduate to the Welcome to Growth podcast that we just launched. We're coming up on like episode 10 now. It's more in-depth and way more nerdy like this. Like, this is why I wanted to start a new podcast. If you have questions about this kind of stuff, I love it. Send me an email at dillon@vendrive.com. And if you're a reseller, doing wholesale or anything like that, where you have, competition on a listing, definitely check out goaura.com. That's our repricing tool. That's my main focus at the moment. And favorite book, there's a few that certainly stand out, but I'm going to give you one that you've never heard. And you're going to be like, yeah, of course, Dillon would choose this one. This book is called Algorithms to Live By. It's literally like right here. This book, listen, it's not as dense as you would think. Here's what it does. It takes a algorithm from computer science and it says, listen, here's how you apply this to your own life in a realistic day-to-day manner. I'll give you a prime example. One of the algorithms is called scheduling. And if you look at a single machine scheduling problem, basically a human, you're a single machine. If I give you a set of tasks that take 8 hours, you can change the sequence of which you do those tasks in, but it's not going to change the fact that they still take 8 hours. But what you can do is you can shift your desired outcome to maximizing how many things you can get done in the 8 hours period. And a prime example, I'm testing it this week and it's been phenomenal. You do a calculation for task density. This is the nerdiest thing. You take the priority or the weight of the task and you divide it by how long it's going to take. That gives you a ratio, right? So 0.3, 1.0, whatever.
You did say this was not deep, right? I'm clearing that. It's not deep though, right? The book's not deep.
It's really not. It's really not.
Dense.
No, it's super good. It's a quick read.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's good though. And so what's interesting is, I tested this because I'm like, that's pretty cool. So basically you work from the highest density down, right? And what you're trying to get momentum. And so I tested this yesterday on Monday. And before 10 a.m., I had more than half my task done. That would have taken me till like 1 p.m. Now it's the same task. I just reconstructed how I did it. And so it's little things like this that, if you can pick up books on how to think, on systems, on processes, on how to just optimize you as a human, that's your competitive advantage, right? The fact that I know now that nobody's heard of task density, people go, dude, how are you getting so much done? Task density. I just read the nerdiest book I could find on algorithms where nobody else wanted to do it. And this is not a thick book, really. I mean, I'm a reader, but this is not really a thick book. And you can pick and choose, but this is one that it's going to blow your mind at how conscious you become of the things you do and why you do certain things. And you're going to be like, everything needs to change now.
Good. Thank you for your time. I'm going to be ordering that book as soon as we wrap this up. I'm positive you'll be back on the show at some point in the future. I look forward to being on your new show. And did I understand that Wholesale Made Easy, that podcast is coming to an end, or there's going to be another season, or
so it's come to an end. The way I approach that podcast, I'm not a big fan of tactics. I'm really not. Give me foundational principles. And so when I started that podcast, I wanted to save you the $2,000 or $3,000 it would have cost you to learn that information, and just say, listen, I would rather you spend that money on inventory. And so instead of, launching a free course or anything like that, I said, listen, I like to talk. I'm going to go from start to finish of, by the time you're done listening to the 40 plus episodes, everything you need to know, plus a lot more, not only to start a wholesale Amazon business, but to scale it very easily and very quickly. And then we got to a point where we covered just about everything. I'm like, all right, well, there's only so much you can cover here that before you have to start talking about, short-term tactics and stuff. And that's not really the type of business person that I am. So I said, you know what, this is going to be an evergreen podcast. It's going to be one full season. and nothing has changed in the last year or so related to the content.
I love it, man. Have an awesome day, bro, and stay safe during COVID. I look forward to connecting again and having you back down in Miami for round 3 at the Amazon Seller Meetup, bro. Be safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos.
Liked what you heard and want to stay connected? Join our Facebook group or find me anywhere on social media at Wizards of Amazon, or text the word Amazon to 69922.